Good afternoon, and welcome to my second quarter 2019 broadcast. Today is Tuesday, May 28th. I hope that everyone had an enjoyable Memorial Day weekend. I know that the weather here in Rochester was fantastic and made for a much more enjoyable holiday. Today's content is incredibly impactful, and I'm asking each of you to stop doing what you're doing and give this broadcast your full attention. I think that failure to understand the things I'm about to communicate to you can have a negative consequence, and I'd prefer that you get it right the first time. So here's the content items. While there's not many in terms of count, they're far-reaching, and what I need you to understand is how it's impacting your book of business, because each of you have elected to organize your books in slightly different ways. Some of you are using all discretionary, some of you are using a mix, some of you are using all non-discretionary, and understanding which accounts are being migrated to and being able to automatically take advantage of some of our program updates is important. So with that, I just want to dive right into this. So we're going to look at the mutual fund share class conversions, money market conversions. I want to talk a little bit about DocStar document submissions. And towards the end here, there's some, I think, far-reaching things that you need to be aware of. We recently implemented a new contract with Pershing. There's been some pricing changes that people need to understand. And then lastly, I want to talk to you about some marketing efforts that we are pursuing. So with the new contract agreement that we put in place with Pershing, we've talked about this before, you now have the ability to use any mutual fund share class without incurring a mutual fund surcharge, that as we did in the past when we used certain mutual funds that weren't sharing revenue with Pershing. So that playing field has been leveled, and as a result, on your discretionary customer accounts, we've been taking action to migrate to the more cost-effective share class. So this process is an incredibly time-consuming, tedious process. It requires that we examine every mutual fund symbol from every fund company to determine if there is a more cost-effective share class. We're performing the analysis on a company-by-company basis and providing Pershing with the requisite data file to perform the conversions. I'm going to slow down here and just dwell on this next bullet point. Our actions are only occurring on discretionary accounts. We do not have the authority to exchange shares on behalf of a non-discretionary customer. So if you have discretionary customer accounts, non-discretionary advisory customer accounts, they're going to be left behind unless you take action. So I'm perfectly willing to give any one of you or all of you assistance in how to determine where we're finding the data, how to find which accounts are holding which share classes, but our actions can only be performed on the discretionary account. So be aware. And I assure you, someone will come to me 6 months from now and will say, why didn't my customer get their share classes converted? And the answer is going to be, I'm going to point you back to this recording and say it's because it's a non-discretionary account. So hopefully that message just came across clearly, and any actions that you need to take, you can work with myself, or I may delegate some of that task to someone else here in the home office to work with you to help you get it done. We've completed the following companies in branch NN3. So we've looked at American Funds, Oppenheimer Funds, Fidelity, and Lord Abbett. The American funds were converted to either F3s or R6s. In some cases, the R6s were less expensive than the F3s. And in those cases, we converted them to the R6. The Oppenheimer were all converted to their iShares, and the Fidelity were converted to Z shares. We requested that Lord Abbett convert their shares to iShares, but they came back and rejected that request, saying that their iShare is institutional only and it requires $1 million minimum purchase ticket. So we've just documented that we've attempted to do it, and that if something changes in a future review, we will attempt again. So going back to what I was talking about a moment ago, the non-discretionary accounts need to be managed by you, the advisor. And if you need some guidance on how to get started with that, reach out to me and we will schedule some time to go over it. Similar conversation around money markets. So we recently, again, as a result of this most recent Pershing contract renewal and renegotiation, we are now making available money market choices and sweep choices that are offering higher yields, predominantly because there's no other revenue being shared with Pershing or with us. So it takes out what used to be revenue shared with others and it's giving it back to the customer. So we have provided Pershing a list of all our discretionary accounts and requested that they change the money market sweep code to the new money market symbols. We've been working to exchange all balances from prior money market symbols to the new symbols on discretionary accounts only. We've updated the rate board in NetX 360 to display our sweep eligible offerings. And we've created a sweep program document that identifies all of our sweep eligible money markets and identifies which selections are available to advisory accounts versus non-advisory account types. That document can be found in DocStar using the search term money sweep without any spaces in there. Before I leave this slide, I want to just emphasize once again, we are unable to take action, even on a money market where it's offering the customer higher yield, without customer authorization on non-discretionary accounts. So we can't take action to get these customers higher yielding returns on their money markets. And in some cases, it's like 60 basis points difference. So it is material, particularly for people that may have balances or higher balances in their money markets. Stepping away from mutual funds and money markets for a moment, as our usage of DocStar evolves, we're continually trying to find ways to make it easier to understand and easier to use so that the submissions come through as the home office staff is anticipating them, and that you don't have to take on the burden of filing or indexing these documents inside of the document management tool. So with that, we've created these content types that will be your default choice if you use the print to functionality. So the idea is you have a document on your screen, you select print. Within your list of printers, you should see something that either says Eclipse or DocStar. You select that item, and you'll be greeted with a dialog box that enables you to, it does enable you to change some things in there, content type, security class, and other things, but if you just use the strategy as always select the item that ends with WIP, which just is work in progress, we will see it in the work basket and we'll be able to index it, we'll be able to separate it if it needs to be separated, and we'll do all that work here at the home office. So look for, depending on your location, look for Excel WIP, Herb WIP, Cheevers WIP, or Albany WIP in your content type. There have been some fields added to that screen where you can add an account number, you can add the document title, and you can add a client name upon submission there so that we have a better chance of getting it correct on first pass without having to reach out to anyone. The document title will take on the title of whatever document you are printing. So if it's something you've saved on your computer and it has the name in there, XYZ, whatever, it will take on that name inside of DocStar. You can change it upon submission, but just so you know that whatever name you've given it, it's going to take on that name inside of DocStar until we re-index it and change it. We updated our advisory agreements, I think, as of April 1st, and what we're finding is that when people are submitting the advisory agreements, they're not including the cover page that was created, And I would ask that you do so because that cover page has pricing on it. So in the footer of it, it shows what are the costs for IRA fees, what are the costs for paper surcharge fees, what are the costs for a variety of other things. So I would suggest that that is a critical component. That page is a critical component to the agreement and the contract between ourselves and the customer. And if there's ever a question arises and we pull up the advisory agreement, the cover page is missing, it makes it much more difficult to respond to something and resolve a potential dispute if we do not have that in hand. So if we do have it in hand, it makes it easier for us to identify what's happening and what is the appropriate cost or charges that should be applied to that customer account. So I want to talk a little bit about our Pershing contract renewals. This contract became effective April 1st, 2019. We purposely sought out a longer term contract with Pershing. You tend to get better pricing if we're willing to give them longer terms. And it also preserves, in large part, the elements of that contract for a longer period of time so that we can rely on and hopefully plan on things not changing. So our contract renewal goals focused on improvements to our advisory offerings. And I think you've witnessed some of that as we start to implement some of those changes, whether it be with regards to money markets, whether it be with regards to mutual fund share classes or other things. So clearly we got some improvement from them out of this contract renewal, and it's going to help us as we continue to implement those across our product offerings. One of the outcomes of this contract renewal is a change to paper surcharge costs. So effective October 1st, 2019, those accounts that are currently subject to paper surcharge, that charge will increase from 75 cents to $1.25 per event. So in an effort to minimize the impact of this cost increase across our advisory platforms, discretionary account owners can elect to receive a quarterly confirmed report rather than receiving the individual confirms as they're generated. Election for a QCR will avoid confirmed paper surcharges. That QCR form is available in DocStar within the folder named Excel Forms, found on the left-hand margin of your DocStar instance. So once again, only discretionarily managed accounts are eligible. So that's the Morningstar platform, that's the METF platform, FB1 and FB2, if the customer agreement clearly delineates that these are discretionary relationships. So effective January 1, 2020, for FB1 customers who do not elect either electronic delivery or QCR, the paper surcharges will be passed through to the customer account. This is a pretty significant change. We're going to have to actually file with the SEC that is being pushed out to the customer, because in the past on that program we were absorbing those charges, but this just takes the control. Number two things: the cost is rising significantly, and it takes the control of who and why those are being charged out of our hands and puts it in the customer. So I would encourage you, if you have FB1 customer accounts that are not already electing electronic delivery of documents, that you encourage them to sign the QCR document so minimally the paper surcharges can be minimized to just statements. So we will be having to send notice to customer accounts on these. I can't say when that will go out, but it will be certainly before, at least 60 days in advance of that charge coming to bear. So there were some other things that changed in our Pershing contract. There's a sample of them here. We are in the process of preparing a disclosure document that will provide detail around all possible charges related to commissionable accounts, and commissionable and advisory accounts. For the most part, the advisory accounts are already delineated in our Form ADV. So the commissionable accounts will be the ones where we've never really provided an adequate or a concise disclosure document to customers around what are the possible charges when one of these events occur. So that will be coming shortly. I'm waiting. We're just finalizing a few elements of that with Pershing, and hopefully within the coming month or so I'll be able to provide that to you, and we will be doing a couple things. For existing customer accounts, they will be delivered a notice that it's available, and if they want it, we'll send them a copy. For new accounts, we'll be sending that out to them upon opening of the new accounts. And we'll be putting notices elsewhere, potentially on our website, so that customers can go there and get access to that document if they choose. So this is, as I'm winding down here, this quarter's commentary, I think it's important, if you haven't picked up on it, that there are some trends to be aware of here, right? So there's I think the first and foremost, there's improved offerings for advisory accounts. And those improvements come in the way of expanded program offerings, expanded share class availability, improved money market choices, and reduced program minimums. Now, the improvements in the advisory landscape, from some perspective, my own included, are occurring at the expense of non-advisory offerings. Our business, as we look at the roadmap, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years out, clearly it is advantageous for us all to move in the direction of advisory. And so as we go to create long-term contracts with Pershing around pricing on various things, our focus is on advisory. And sometimes we have to give up certain elements that would affect only non-advisory. And that is a shrinking base of accounts. It's a shrinking occurrences of some of those things we saw on the previous slide here. I mean, we don't do or see a lot of legal transfer items or a lot of voluntary reorg items. And particularly in our advisory accounts, there's not reverse splits that are typically happening. So a lot of these things that they are changed pricing around or they've implemented new pricing, they are somewhat infrequent occurrences. You look at it and you say, wow, that's a big number, and it is. And it gives Pershing some sense that, hey, we're going to continue to maintain our revenue streams from this relationship. But from our perspective, I know that they're just not occurring on a very frequent basis. So the task will be to inform those customers that potentially can be impacted of the changing landscape, the changing pricing, so that if it occurs in their account and a question is raised, we can point to that disclosure, point to that communication and say, we did share that with you. So the other trend here that I think hopefully has become obvious through this nearly 20 minutes of conversation here is that the non-discretionary advisory accounts are resulting in significant increased work to Excel and to the advisor. The difficulty of bringing recent program improvements to non-discretionary accounts shines a light on how the non-discretionary accounts are being disadvantaged. And it shows up in the share class conversion effort, it shows up in the money market conversion effort, and it shows up in the avoidance of paper surcharges. So I would suggest that these facts should cause a mass conversion of non-discretionary accounts to discretionary and an increased migration of commissionable accounts to advisory offerings. This is the last slide before I close out here. We are, in an effort to try and promote advisory, we are doing a variety of things. We will have a full-page advertorial in the June 2019 Northeast edition of Money, Bloomberg, Forbes, and Fortune magazine. And this is really intended to just troll for not only customers, but trying to attract other advisors to our platform. This is a look at what that ad is going to look like. Let me just kind of scale it back a little bit. We can get a view. So there is not a lot of verbiage in the ad, but there's this, call to action for advisors. We've created a white paper around practice management. It's available on our website. They can get it by following the link here. And again, we're hopeful that this is going to help us with regards to a recruiting effort. There's also a call to action for the customers here. So I can't predict whether we'll get any response from any of this. We're hopeful that it's going to give us just another element of exposure out there in the public that potentially will attract either advisors and or customers. So I think I said in a previous broadcast, if we don't have detail around your profile on our website and someone's coming to our website because of one of these ads, it makes it harder to anticipate that person's going to find their way to your doorstep because you may be the closest geographically located one of our individuals to them. So I would encourage you can look at our website, see if you have complete profile information out there. I think a picture is an important part. People know who they're dealing with when they look at a picture. When they see you face to face, they know that it's the same person. So if you haven't done a picture and haven't updated a profile, again, reach out to me. We will help you get through that. The other thing we are doing is we are beginning with the month of June and repeated in the month of August. We will be sending postcard mailings to all customers in branch 54E and branch 539. So every customer in these that start with either one of these two branch prefixes are all commissionable accounts today. So the intent is to make them aware that, hey, there is an alternative to what you've been doing for perhaps in some cases decades with us. There is now a fee-based alternative that many of these folks may have no awareness of whatsoever. So the goal is just to bring awareness and to bring awareness to you that if you get a phone call saying, hey, I got one of these postcards, what's this all about? You can be prepared to respond appropriately. So the postcards will only be sent to people that currently have commissionable account relationships with us. Some of them may also have advisory relationships with us, so that I wouldn't expect you to get a phone call from them, but maybe you do. Maybe they say, hey, you know what, this commissionable account, should I bring this over and make it advisory? So just be prepared if you get a phone call of that nature. So that is all I have for today. I think much shorter in length than I provided in the first quarter, but the things that we talked about today are incredibly impactful. Hopefully, if you have questions around them or you need assistance with strategy in approaching some of these things, I need you to reach out to me. We need you to let us know, and we will do everything we can to help you get there. So thank you very much. Have a great day.